Hello, strangers. Welcome back to another true, scary story. And this one is story number 295. When I first got to college, I wanted the full experience. Also, living off campus would have required a car, and car insurance, and parking, and repairs, and maintenance, and living in the dorms, though, that required none of those things, and it freed up money for other essentials. Speaking of parties, one night I went to a party. There were a lot of those in the dorms. I wanted to meet new people, and the party happened to be right between two of the dorm buildings, in sort of a courtyard with some barbecues and picnic tables. And I did meet people. A lot of really good people, some of whom I'm still friends with today. But I also met Randy. Randy seemed all right. No one was avoiding him or averting their eyes. So when he came over and started leaning in on a conversation I was having with some others, I didn't think much of it. He seemed completely normal. Cute even. He spoke a few times in that taking the joke and running it a bit further way. Again, completely normal. At some point, he had worked his way over, sidling up next to me. That's when something strange began to happen. Whenever someone would speak directly to me, Randy would turn, face inches from mine, and begin asking me about something completely different. Every time. Guy to my right would ask how I liked so-and-so's class. He'd just get the professor's name out, and on my left, Randy would suddenly begin to talk loudly over, like he had been on a time delay. And he'd ask where I'd grown up, if I was local to the town or something else. The first couple of times it happened, I tried to answer both questions, but then when I answered Randy's question first, and then turned my head to answer the second question, Randy in my ear would follow up, now talking over me with additional questions. The third or so time that happened, people were starting to shoot looks at each other. I was getting uncomfortable, and my neck began to hurt. It felt like I was at a tennis match, having to whip my face back and forth from the group to Randy and back to the group again. But no one told him to stop being, I'm not sure exactly, rude, weird, awkward. So I decided it fell to me. The next time the sequence happened, a girl asked me about something, and on that 2-second delay, Randy blurted out another question. I turned to Randy and told him to hang on, okay? I've just got the one set of ears. Then I turned back to the girl. I don't remember what her comment even was, because with no delay, I suddenly felt something cold and wet come pouring off the back of my head. Randy had dumped his cup of keg beer down the back of my head. My hair was soaked. I was pissed. I'd spent time to make sure my hair looked good for the party that night, and now a legit hour of straightening was ruined. Also, smelly. The group I was with finally had something to say about that. A couple of guys were stepping forward, pulling me back behind them, placing themselves between me and Randy. Randy, from what I could tell, was smirking and rolling his eyes. Very, it's just a joke, bro, kind of a reaction. The couple or so girls with me were trying, to no avail, to daub the beer off my hair. But what could a handful of napkins really do? Pissed, I turned on heel and left the party to head back up to my dorm for a shower. Now, our dorms were pretty nice. Private college and all that. So we had our own showers, shared between 2 rooms. which is a lot better than some of the communal floor-wide bathroom situations I've seen on TV. I headed in, stripped, and jumped right into the shower while it was still lukewarm. I think I was pissed enough to be literally heated. The whole time I was scrubbing my head, mad as hell at the situation. So when I heard knocking, and it had to be loud knocking for me to hear it over the water, my scrubbing at my scalp, and my cussing, I was not in the mood. I figured it was one of the girls, though, coming to check on me. That made me feel a bit less angry, so I called out, knowing full well the tone and volume of my voice was all they'd get from behind 2 doors and with water running. But I wanted them to know I was fine, just doing what I had to not smell like a frat house. A beat, and the knocking came again. I tried calling louder, thinking, surely they'd understand I was in the shower, kinda got my hands full. They're not wanting me to come let them in, are they? And I mean, if they were so concerned, each door in the dorm had a whiteboard on it. You could leave notes or write down if you were out. I figured they could just leave a note, and I'd check when I got out of the shower. I got back to rinsing the shampoo out of my hair again. And again, there was more knocking. I got a funny feeling about it. I stopped calling out. When I finished reconditioning my hair, had it up in that weird towel snail turban thing we all know how to do, and I'd gotten dressed in PJs, I finally went to the door to see if they'd left a note on my whiteboard. But there was nothing written there. Blame it on the beer, blame it on Randy, but the next weekend I decided to give the partying a pass. I had thought about staying in entirely, but the noise from between our buildings was as such that I kept getting distracted. Finally, I decided to get dressed and head out to the little area of town right outside college campus. They had some little coffee shops and such, and while I was unsure of dorm parties, I did still want to make some friends. I ended up sharing a table at a crowded cafe with a group of 3 people, a boy and girl who were clearly on a date, and their single friend, Dave. Dave and I ended up hitting it off. When his 2 friends split, he stayed on and we talked until the coffee house closed. He and I swapped numbers, and overall I felt a lot better about things. When I got back up to the dorm, and up to my floor, all that buzzy, happy feeling dropped suddenly into acid, though. For when I happened to glance through the glass window on the stairwell door, I could have sworn I saw Randy. Dorm party, beard-dumping Randy, walking down my hallway. His back was to me, but I could have sworn it was him. I stayed in the stairwell and I waited. He made it down the hallway and went out the door opposite mine, where I assume he descended the stairs and left. I mean, it was a girls-only building, all 3 floors, so he couldn't live there. Maybe he was visiting someone. All I knew was seeing him again, I found those feelings of anger from the beer incident hadn't melted away. Once I was sure he'd gone, I came out of the stairwell and made it back to my room. There was no incident, not so much as a message on my whiteboard. I didn't have much time to think it over. School was progressively kicking my ass, so I have to admit it may have been weeks or even a couple of months between that and what happened next. Dave and I had been texting, and the few times I made it out of studying purgatory, we went on dates, had dinner, hung around on park swing sets, and alternated between talking about our lives growing up and spinning ourselves on our swings, twisting the chains up as tight as we could before releasing the tension, sending ourselves spinning, legs and hair flying out. Things felt good. Stressful with school, but really good. So good that I was telling my sweetmeat all about Dave, all of it one night. We were sitting in my room, just chatting, and she'd asked me about his family when a knock came at the door. I was rooting around under my bed for sustenance. I knew for a fact there was still at least half a bag of marshmallows somewhere that I had unfinished business with. So from the vantage point of the door, you couldn't see me at all. This meant that when my sweet mate answered the door, the person knocking could only see her. And that person, you guessed it, was Randy. My sweet mate knew the dorm party story, and she knew Randy. She was savvy and kept it glib, asking him what he was doing there and what he wanted. I heard his voice and froze where I was, listening in. Randy sounded confused, then pointedly asked where I was. My sweet mate, bless her, played it off, asked why he thought I would be there. And he said, "Well, isn't this her room?" How the hell would he know that? My sweet mate laughed, simply told him to guess again, then asked if he had a message that she could pass to me. He didn't, or didn't want to give it to her. He just turned mid-conversation and left. I stayed under the bed until not only did I hear my door close, but also felt the reverberations of his footsteps dim to nothing. Then I popped up, only to look to my sweet mate like, what the hell just happened? She was pleased with herself for playing him off. While she did agree with me that it was weird he'd come to my room, we shared no classes, we had few to no mutuals, and weirder still that he knew where my room was. Well, as far as she was concerned, she'd taken care of that problem, hadn't she? I was racking my brains about it all, but my sweet mate more or less immediately lost interest in the story and began scrolling through her socials. So I dropped it. I mean, what would worrying do about it anyway? And she had solved it. However Randy had come to know where my room was, well, now he didn't. A few nights later, I invited Dave back to my room. We put on a movie. We didn't watch most of it, but like the film, we kept things PG-13. Barely. We ended up sitting there, sprawled on my bed, the only light in the room coming from the muted TV. The DVD menu replaying on an endless loop of color, no sound. Dave got up to use the bathroom, and I stood, readjusting pants that had slipped low and my shirt that had slipped high. The way my room was, I was standing between the bed and the door to my room, so close that I could hear something there. Something at my door. I stepped closer, heard it again. Shifting, breathing. We had these little notional peepholes. They were scratched to hell and hard to see out of, but I decided to try my luck. I moved in front of the door, started to rise up on my toes to see. And Dave came out of the bathroom, asking me in a voice that seemed so loud, "Jess, have you got any?" I whirled around, then looked back to the peephole, peered through it. No one was there. There was the sense of movement, and yes, the reverb of footsteps retreating from my door, but that might have been my heart hammering from the start Dave gave me. The semester went on. I did all right in my classes. Dave and I stuck together all through autumn. For winter break, I was going home. My sweet mate had already left, and Dave was down in the parking lot, having agreed to take me to the train station. I was just gathering up a few last things. The winter had come on quick, and even at a time as early as this, before 5 p.m., it was dark enough that I had to turn on the light to see around my room, finish packing up whatever crap I was taking back with me. When I heard the knock, though, I froze. It's the closest I've had to an animal instinct in my life. I just knew that was a bad knock, that the person making that knock was bad. There was something bad on the other side of the door. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Something that now stood between me, Dave, and my train home, and I needed to figure out a way to deal with it. I couldn't afford to wait it out, and I didn't have my sassy sweet mate to come in and save me. Slowly, trying to walk heel to toe so as not to make a sound, I advanced until I bellied up to my door. I rose up on my toes, but before I could get my eye positioned to see through the peephole, I heard it. A voice. Randy's voice. A voice that said, "I know you're there." What the actual hell? Randy? How had he known that I was there, that it was my room? I didn't say anything. I was holding my breath, not daring to move. But I didn't need to. He kept talking. He told me he knew I was there because he could see the shadow of my feet under the door. Something about that, about how casually he said something so calculated. I felt cold all over. It had been him in the hallway that night when I came home. The night I'd had Dave over too. And those were just the times I knew about. He'd been staking out my dorm, a dorm he somehow knew about almost from the first night he met. And that's when it hit me. The first night he met me. The night he poured beer on me. Because what would any girl do if beer was poured on her at a dorm party? They'd leave. They'd go back to their dorm to clean up. Anyone standing outside could see which room they went back to. All they'd have to do is wait for the girl to get to her room and turn on the light. Randy's voice got harsh. It was vocal fry plus angry whisper. He must have been lip to seam where the door met the molding, and for 30 seconds that felt like falling out of a window. He told me that if he'd known how filthy, dirty, insert awful thing here that I was, he would have never wasted his time on me. And just like that, he was gone. That looming presence, like I could have felt his body heat and heartbeat through the door separating us, was just ripped away. It was gone. I realized I was still holding my breath. Even if he was gone, I scrambled away from the door to breathe, just in case he or the poison that he brought with him still lingered. I moved out of the dorms the following semester. I started telling these stories because I had so many of them. My own experiences as well as my friends, kind of just knowing that it's sort of my jam. People bring me stories the way that cats bring dead birds to their owners. And of course, I cherish every one. But sometimes it's hard to sit down and go through editing one of these stories, making the grammar make sense, changing just enough of it that nobody's going to get sued. But also, being able to stand up and walk out into the world, being freshly reminded that there is a very slim chance that a person you walk by in a hallway, or in an aisle at the grocery store, or sit across from in a meeting or at the gym, is only one opportunity, one mental, I bet I could get away with it, from doing something very bad to you. Very slim, but never zero. As per always, the like, the comment, the subscribe. or to just come back next Tuesday when we do this all again with another story. I'm just really happy you came by today. And until next time, I do hope you take care, stranger.